Have you ever replayed the same conversation for days, long after it actually ended? There's a real name for that pattern. Psychologists call it rumination, getting stuck on distress without ever reaching a solution. Here's what's happening underneath. When your mind has nothing to do, it defaults to a network of brain regions built for self-focused thought. In other words, an idle mind naturally turns its attention back to you. That's exactly why the replay hits hardest in the shower, or lying in bed, or during a quiet drive. Those are the moments your brain has the least distraction and the most room to wander. Psychologist Kross studies this inner voice in his book Chatter. He explains it starts out as a useful tool for planning and reflecting, but under enough stress, that same voice can turn from an advisor into a critic. Researchers Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert tracked people's thoughts throughout the day. They found the mind wanders nearly half the time, and a wandering mind tends to be a less happy one. Replaying a moment can feel like problem solving. Your brain frames it that way, like it's working something out. But research shows rumination rarely produces solutions. Mostly, it just produces repetition. There's one distinction worth remembering. Reflection asks, "What can I learn from this?" Rumination asks, "What's wrong with me?" And that second question almost never has an exit. Back in the 1920s, a psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik noticed something odd about waiters in a busy cafe. They remembered every unpaid order in perfect detail, but forgot it completely the moment the bill was settled. That observation led to what's now called the Zeigarnik Effect. Our brains hold onto unfinished tasks far more tightly than ones that are already done. An awkward conversation works the same way. Your mind files it as an open loop, a task without closure. So it keeps resurfacing, asking for a resolution that doesn't really exist anymore. That's why you rehearse comebacks you'll never actually say. Your brain isn't torturing you on purpose. It's trying to close the file by imagining an ending. Researchers Roy Baumeister and E.J. Masacampo found something surprising. Just writing down a concrete plan for an unfinished task reduced intrusive thoughts about it, even without finishing the task itself. That tells us something useful. Closure doesn't require fixing what already happened. It just requires giving your brain a believable signal that the matter's been handled. So the replay isn't your mind punishing you. It's more like a ticket that's still sitting open, waiting for someone to mark it resolved. In a well-known study at Cornell, psychologist Thomas Gilovich had college students put on an embarrassing t-shirt, one with Barry Manilow's face on it. Then he asked them to guess how many people in the room actually noticed. Students guessed that about half the room clocked the shirt. The real number was closer to 1 in 4, and most people forgot it within minutes. This is called the spotlight effect. Because you're the center of your own experience, you assume everyone else is watching just as closely. Most of the time, they're not. There's a related idea called the illusion of transparency. It's the belief that your nervousness was obvious to everyone in the room. Research shows it almost never actually shows. Meanwhile, the person you had that awkward moment with is probably starring in their own mental movie, more likely replaying their own words, not analyzing yours. Some psychologists trace this hypersensitivity back to our ancestors. In a small tribe, social rejection could genuinely threaten survival. Your brain may still be running on that same outdated alarm system. Here's the humbling part. By the time you've replayed a moment 50 times, the other person may not have thought about it once. Susan Nolen-Hoeksema spent decades studying rumination, and her research links it closely to anxiety and depression. In one study, she followed survivors of a Bay Area earthquake and found that ruminators struggled far more than those who didn't get stuck replaying it. Chronic mental replay keeps your stress response switched on. Your body releases stress hormones long after the actual event is over. It can't always tell a remembered moment from a present one. This pattern is also linked to worse sleep. That self-focused brain network tends to get busiest at night, right when you need it to quiet down. Rumination also eats up working memory. That's the same mental resource you need for focus, creativity, and clear decisions. It's part of why heavy replayers often feel drained, even on quiet days. Kross's research points to another cost. Constantly venting the same story to friends can actually wear down your support system. Instead of strengthening it, there's a strange irony here. Replaying a conversation to avoid future mistakes often backfires. It tends to make the next conversation feel more anxious, not more confident. The good news is that this loop is treated in cognitive behavioral therapy as a thinking habit. And, like any habit, it can be retrained. One well-researched technique is called psychological distancing. Kross's studies found that replaying a moment using your own name instead of I can measurably lower how intense it feels. Try the time travel question too. Ask yourself, will this matter in 1 week? In a year? In 10 years? Zooming out tends to shrink the moment down to its real size. You can also borrow from the Zeigarnik research. Write down what happened, what you'd do differently, and one line saying the matter is processed. That written plan alone can quiet the loop. Try scheduling your worry on purpose. Give it a fixed 15-minute window each day. Oddly enough, that can stop your mind from treating every idle moment as open season. Interrupting the pattern physically also helps. Exercise, a walk outside, or any task that fully holds your attention can quiet that self-focused brain network. There's also a technique called cognitive diffusion from Stephen Hayes' acceptance and commitment therapy. It just means naming the thought as a thought, noticing the replay is happening again. That small shift can loosen its grip. Finally, try the friend test, based on self-compassion research by Kristen Neff. Talk to yourself the way you'd talk to a friend who said the same awkward thing. The evidence suggests that self-compassion works better than self-criticism for actually changing behavior. If this just put words to something you've felt for years, do one small thing right now. Hit like and drop a comment with the one conversation your mind won't let go of. You might be surprised how many people down there are replaying something almost identical. Seeing that can be its own kind of closure. And if you want more science-backed breakdowns of why your mind works this way, the psychology of overthinking, social anxiety, and the quiet habits running your life, subscribe and turn on notifications because a new one drops every week. The replay took years to build. Understanding it is how you start taking it apart.